Hello, my friends. I hope you had a fantastic week so far. This week, I'm back with Nils. We're talking mindset, we're talking abundance, we're talking about seasons of your life, and also how you can move forward from some curveballs, challenges, whether that's in your personal or professional life, as there seems to be a lot going on, a lot happening at the moment. Hope you're healthy, hope you're well, hope you're happy. I'll see you very soon. I'm now going to introduce or hand over to past me to conduct this interview. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in just a moment.
Yeah, so my name is Nils from Uncaged Existence, and what I really do is I help small business startup founders, right? I focus on the founders who, and the internal factors to basically create their foundation of success so that they can either, transition from corporate to entrepreneurship in some cases, or in others, just achieve their true potential, basically. And I guess maybe to clarify in terms of what do I really mean with internal factors, it's these things as what you mentioned, right? Mindset, limiting beliefs, fears, how do you overcome them and how do you kind of sharpen the tool that is you, right? And by doing that, really, by focusing on this internal world, really what people get is, they experience more freedom, they experience more joy, and they experience more success, however they define that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the time, my friend. And, you know, everyone asks me, why do I choose the
Mm,
guests I choose? How do I choose the guests I choose, etc. But I think we're in a really interesting scenario when it comes to the economy, when it comes to the market, and when it comes to like what people are really feeling right now in respect to like the pain or the economy, or like I've just come from a call where we were talking about like how do you get through and still grow through an economic challenge,
mm,
right? And the kind of crux there is mindset,
mm.
right? Isn't it? Really? But at a really fundamental level, how does someone tackle like this unbearing challenge of things are slowing down, things are getting harder, etc. Right? The phone isn't ringing as
Mhm.
much. There's not many inquiries coming in from the website, etc. Like what, from a mindset point of view, if that was a struggle that your clients had, how would you help support, etc. to get them started on that journey of like fixing that problem or putting out that fire?
I mean, it's a really good question, actually. And I guess there's a few things, right? Like, I think there's one in terms of making the distinction between, what you can and cannot control, right? I think what's the truth with capital T, what's really going on versus what are the stories you're telling yourself. And I think creating some awareness around that is really powerful. And then also switching it a little bit, right? Looking at, okay, what is the opportunity here? Because yes, economic downturn in this case, in this example, I mean, it's tough and it can be tough. But but what's the opportunity to potentially be creative? To find different ways to, attract people, to have conversations with people, to position your product. What can you do potentially even to pivot? And I think it's getting people to see that there is always a choice is very powerful. You can choose to be the victim. It's like, oh no, the economic downturn, I can't do anything. Or you can choose to see what you can learn and how you can approach it.
I think it's a really important point you mentioned there, which was around pivoting,
Mm,
right? Because something which I was fortunate enough to be able to really lean into during the start of the
hmm
pandemic, which has now become an extremely valuable asset for me as a skill set because of that. And that's why I'm eternally grateful to have been in business when I was at that time of the
mm,
pandemic, right? Difficult situation for everyone, etc., etc., etc. But a lot of value in regards to my own journey as a growth point of view, me as a person, has come from that experience. So I'm a very different business owner than I was
mm,
then. I guess the question comes though, for those who don't really know what pivoting is, and if they do, they don't really know the context in how you would go about doing
mm.
so. In the layman's terminology, what would you say pivoting is?
So for me, it's just changing it up, right? It's very simple. You just change the direction that you're going to, whether that's a product, whether that's a service, whether that's even, you know, maybe going back part time to something so that you get some financial security and then move forward. It's just changing direction. And I guess maybe to add to that, I think the very first point in that is understanding sometimes the reluctance to pivot. Because I think what I've seen sometimes as well with business owners is it's their baby, right? They've created this baby in their mind, and they don't want to change. Don't want to give it up. And fair play. It's very understandable, right? Because you have put a lot of work in. And I think getting clarity on why you don't want to change and acknowledging that and seeing kind of what the cost is, but also what the benefit would be of changing can really help in that pivot. Again, coming back to clarity and awareness, for me, that's one of the kind of cornerstones of anything, of the start of a change. Because with insight, with awareness, you can take action.
I think it's a really important observation, which is that socially, as creatures, though, we're conditioned to not pivot because it would be perceived as a failure move, right? I don't personally see that, but that's how society will see it. I see it as a seasonal change, right? Okay, so during this season of my life, I did this thing. Cool, fantastic. And I learned these skills that are transferable to this, and this. Cool,
Yeah.
magic. And then, maybe 2 or 3 seasons, or 1 season, or 2 seasons, or 3 seasons down the line, I get the opportunity to do this again. Cool. Right now, in this season I'm transitioning into, I need to change up. I need to twist. I need to adapt. I need to change. I need to evolve. And that's, I think, the key, because something which I have been very fortunate to be able to have instilled in me through my mother, but also just through life and adversity in general. And, for those who know my story, you know what I'm talking about. But it's about, I think, for me, having the perspective that things will change and adapt. And that's the only certainty we have in life, which is things are going to be uncomfortable for a significant period of time. And that's okay. Right? Right? And actually, you're going to have a period where it's maybe slightly more comfortable again, but then, surprise, it'll be uncomfortable again. So, and to quote you from the pre-conversation before the show, it's about being comfortable in that uncomfortability, right? And I think for me, it's really important to gain that level of perspective early, especially in a business context, but as for your own personal growth as well. It's about gaining that perspective. But what role do you feel there? Like, what role does perspective have for either your clients or yourself? Like, because for me, it's an absolute game changer. It's the main reason why I'm able to get up every day and go, you know what? Today's gonna be a good day.
Well, I mean, Carson, 100%, right? I think perspective, again, coming back to choice, right? I mean, we can choose how we see things, and depending on how we choose how we see things, things happen, right? Or we perceive as things to happen in a certain way. And I mean, I think perspective is really, really important. And I've, again, also due to life circumstances, I've really gained that perspective from an early age. So unfortunately, I lost my mother. But what that has given me is perspective. It's perspective of, it really can't be that bad. All of the kind of things that we deem to be life-changing and super important, they really aren't. They really, really aren't. And so we can create that reality. We really, really can. It's our thoughts and our perspective. So, in the work, I guess, that I do, it's very much focused on that perspective, on that mindset, because again, when we just talked about the economic downturn, you can come from the perspective of a victim and say, oh, every time I try something new, something bad happens that I can't control. Or you can come from a perspective of opportunity and think about that, what are different ways. So it's critical. It really, really is, in my opinion.
Yeah. And firstly, thank you for sharing that. But I think
Welcome.
it's a really good example of, the perspective we live our lives by, right? Because we can go about it from of what we can control and what we can't, sure. But also it's about understanding what's really important to you. And I think the key there, and I can use other examples from my own life, but I won't. It's about cherishing the people you have in your life in those seasons of your life, right? Because also seasons can be, this person is with me during this period of my life, and I'm grateful, and I have the ability, and I'm I have the great gratitude of actually having this person in my life at this time, because whether you're 25, 30, 40, 50, 100, whatever it is, We don't know when we're going to run out of time. We don't know.
It's very true.
I hopefully will be the statistical average and live to
Mm.
100 or 80 or 90, right? Statistically, right? Cool, fantastic. Hopefully I will. I also might not be the statistically average. I might die tomorrow. Touch wood, I won't, right? Because if I do, this podcast will never be seen. Number one.
What a shame.
Right? It is what it is. Sorry. But the crux there though is to live in perspective, and you know, for the audience's context, I think it's important, no matter how dark it may seem at this moment for them, whether that's financial, whether that's emotional, whether that's whatever it is, right? Maybe you just feels like I've had one thing after another thing after another thing after another thing. As long as you keep moving, whether you can walk, whether you can crawl, as long as you just move, right? It's not about running. It's not about let's do loads and loads and loads and loads. No, just do one action that moves you forward, and then again tomorrow, and then again tomorrow, and then again tomorrow. And eventually, what happens is you are fine. You're good. You're calm. You have gained clarity. You've gained understanding. You've gained awareness. You've gained, hopefully, knowledge. You've gained growth. You've gained all these things that have just come from, that's cool. And I think it's about living in the moment and being present. Something that I'm trying to do this year is be a lot more present with what I'm doing, who I'm talking to, you know, in this context, giving you my most of my attention, you know, all of my attention, trying to add value to you, trying to give the audience as much value as we can, but also understanding that I am grateful to have this time with you, and I'm grateful to be able to share this knowledge in this conversation, right? And the second you change your mindset to that and live in a span of gratefulness, I don't actually believe you can be egotistical, because it grounds you infinitely, right? And I think that's the key with this economy, because when the economy was good and was booming, I saw it, I'm sure you saw it, there was lots of people who were like, this is going really well and I've got a massive ego. Funny enough, those people are quite quiet at the moment. But what would you say, I guess the question comes from that though, which is what would you say people should look out for, whether that's like for their family, friends, etc., or themselves, to not be that kind of ego up your own arse, like I'm too big to fail, because we both know the second you get to that point, it's a matter of time until you fail, right? As in your actual business, because you're like, oh, I'm too big to fail, I can't. I think one of the main reasons why people are successful is because they stay grounded and they stay humble. I think that's the important key for me. But just to reiterate the question, like how would you help someone sort of see some of those, I hate using the term red flags, but red flags, issues, concerns, etc., in either son, daughter, partner, mother, daughter, etc., or themselves?
It's a good question. I think it comes down to challenging who you're being. Very, very simple, because who you're being defines your actions and defines, you know, what you are doing. You know, the how and the what are kind of unconscious, but who you are is can be a conscious thing. And when people start to realize that, you know, who they're being leads to these results. So, you know, if you're being a prick, some people might be pricks to you too, or, you know, people will not want to help you, or all of a sudden you're all alone, you know, whatever it might be. But you are planting those seeds by being who you are. And I think, you know, that is a game changer. And it's also kind of coming to the realization, I think sometimes as well, is like you also not your thoughts. That's a really, really big one. You are not your thoughts. Because we very, very quickly judge ourselves, we judge others, and it's about, oh, why are we judging people? And you go down this rabbit hole. And so having that kind of forgiveness for yourself as well, I think is really, really paramount to get to that acceptance, and then come from that space of gratitude that you said as well. Is okay, cool, you know, that's fine. You know, I'm grateful for the journey that I've had. I'm grateful for where I've been, but now I have a choice.
Yeah, and you know, there's lots of quotes I could use to help articulate this, but I think the one I'll use is, you shouldn't care or shouldn't really it doesn't matter what someone else's opinion of you is, and it's none of your, the actual quote is, it's none of your business what someone else's opinion of yours is, nor should you make it yours, right? I believe it was Stephen Harvey who said it. And the crux of that quote, right, and it's one of my favorite to use, and the reason why I use it here is because it actually doesn't matter what someone else's opinion is of you, and you shouldn't be interested in what their opinion is of you, because what bearing or what metric or what value or what etc. comes from you knowing or caring about what their opinion is of you. The more important question is, what's your opinion and your belief of yourself? And I was interviewing a great gentleman who would have been out last week at the time of recording this show. Yesterday, when I recorded it, and we were talking about you have to love yourself. The best values I've ever been instilled with from my mother is you have to wholeheartedly love yourself before you can love anyone else, right? But it's a very important principle because it allows you to gain a huge amount of self-esteem, a huge amount of self-confidence. And this is not the same as being egotistical, and that's why I alluded to it earlier about being egotistical. Because egotistical is, I have nothing else to learn and I am the best, right? Having self-confidence is saying, I'm not the finished article yet. I have a lot of shit to learn, but I'm fucking good at what I do, right? And actually being self-confident enough to be able to act even when it's uncomfortable and not care about the outcome, I think is the key there. But it does lean on quite nicely to limiting beliefs, right? Because as I'm sure you've had it with clients, people have gone, I'm going to networking first, that's terrifying. I'm going on Cotton's podcast, that's terrifying. I'm doing public speaking, that's terrifying. I'm going to be on a video next week, that's terrifying. I'm going on the radio next week, that's terrifying. How would you help your clients remove those limiting beliefs from any of those actions or any others that you can add to actually get them to feel not 100% comfortable? Because until you've done it a couple of times, you're not going to feel 100% comfortable, right? But how would you help them along that journey? Because I think part of the issue that some people have at the moment is that they need to do things outside their comfort zone to be able to scale and grow, but they can't because they stand in their own way.
100%. 100%. I just wanted to share one really, really interesting poem before I answer that question, because there's an excellent poem. I forget the author, but it's A Man in the Mirror, and it all talks about, the only person that you need to be proud of is the person that's looking back in the mirror. And it's a really, really powerful message. I just wanted to drop that there. But in terms of limiting beliefs, it's an interesting one because it can sometimes work differently depending on the person. I think there's a few elements. Again, it comes to, we are not our thoughts, and I think when we come from our core and start realizing that, as easily as we can believe something that's limiting, we can also believe something that's empowering. That being said, again, I think first is awareness. How is this limiting belief actually blocking you? I'll give you an example, Carlton, because I had a belief back in the day that success is all about corporate ladder. Go to uni, corporate ladder, climb that nice greasy pole, and I had that. So when I started kind of, I guess, exploring entrepreneurship, started another side business, then started my coaching, it was difficult because what I was doing is I was throwing away that. I was going against my own belief of success. And so that's really, really tough. But what is key is first getting to the realization of what the cost is. What's the actual cost of believing that? Number one. Number two, sometimes is also understanding, where did this actually come from? Getting an understanding of where this came from can quite often allow you to debunk it for absolute BS, basically, or just another reality. But then also seeing if you can find other examples, either within your own life or people or even not people that but people that have shown that your belief is just not true. And then you kind of touched upon something really interesting earlier as well, is take small actions. Take small actions that can start disproving it. Because, by taking action, you're debunking the belief. and you can see for what it is. It's just a belief. And then all of a sudden, you've got this kind of field of possibilities, right? Because if that's not true, what is? And then you get to start to play, and that is amazing.
And I hate being the quote relevant here, but the other one that jumped
Go
to
for it. I
mind,
love a good quote.
which was which was I think it was Alex. I've forgotten his last name, but I'll put it in the description. It's basically the crux of the quote is self-confidence and being confident around what you do comes from having a shit ton of evidence that you are who you say you are. Outwork your self-doubt, right? It's got nothing to do with I am this thing. No, I am this thing because I've proven I am this thing, and here's a tangible set of results that prove I'm what I'm talking about. And I can now speak with a large amount of conviction around that thing because I have all this evidence backing me up, right? That's where it comes from, because from a psychology point of view, and a tribal psychology point of view, I'll use a really common one in the dating world, right? Beautiful girl, right? What if she says no? So what's going to happen in my brain is, if I go and ask her out, she says no. If I've had experiences that has shown me or perceived me that I get embarrassed in that scenario, it feels awkward, feels difficult socially, right? I'm less likely to do it. But if I have experiences in my own head when I go back through it in a really, really quick scenario, because this is the split-second decisions we make with our subconscious, that says, actually, I'm completely fine and I'm alive when she says no, and actually nothing changes and nothing happens, I'll go and have a conversation with her and say, hey, sorry to bother you. Would love to take you out for a drink at some point. Business card, napkin, whatever it is. Phone number on. Cool. Then walk away. But it's the same in business. It's the same whenever we do anything. But the reason why we normally don't do it is because what if she says no? What if she laughs at me? What if she takes the piss? What if da-da-da-da? Because we're in that concept in our brain going, we're looking for evidence, right? And this is why actually evidence gathering is really important in marketing, in sales, in anything we do. Because it gives our brain the ability to actually not trigger our fight or flight response, because we know we're not going to die, right? Why do people struggle with public speaking? Why do people struggle with coming on a podcast? Why do people struggle with anything they haven't done? Because of the uncomfortability and the lack of evidence in their brain, right? That's why, right?
I mean, it's interesting there, Carlton, because I think, I 100% agree with you that evidence helps, because you just have proof. It's as simple as that. You've got proof, so your mind believes it, right? But I do
1 + 1 = 2.
exactly.
Right?
But I do believe, honestly, that there is an element of inner confidence. And what I mean with that, there's this confidence that, and I think confidence comes from knowing as well that no matter what happens, no matter what the result is, you know that you will be handling it or can handle it.
Yeah, but surely that's from evidence as well, because you're then cross-referencing other scenarios in your life. Maybe it isn't talking to a girl in my example, but you're then using other evidence and assimilating what the outcome may be and how likely is it to die in the subconscious, e.g., do I trigger my fight or flight response or not? That's all your subconscious is deciding. Do we trigger the flight or fight response? Yes or no? No, I react one way. Yes, I react another way.
Yeah. I mean, yes, there is an element of proof, right? And that it's useful, but I think, we've all gone through things. You've gone through things in your life. I've gone through things in my life, and we've managed, and I think that brings an inner confidence in you that that no matter what happens, even if it's something new, you will be able to manage it. And so you don't necessarily need always to get those proof points in that specific point. For example, if you talk about presentation, but it can help.
I don't think it's around actually like managing it. I think from a survivalistic point of view, it's simply I survived.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
like
exactly.
Tribal mindset wise, it's I didn't die. Cool. Saber-tooth tiger didn't kill me. Great. Right? The rest is just fluff, because the rest is in our is not in our subconscious, it's in our conscious mind, right? Because that's when we this is where preconceived judgments come in. This is where oh my god, this person's judging me. All these things come in. Is conscious, right? What I'm discussing is the actual subconscious stuff we don't even realize happened, right? But I think once we can gain that understanding, and it kind of opens up into this next question I wanted to talk about, which is around accountability.
Yeah.
But I think for me, the key important point is, number one, understanding this is how your brain works, whether you like it or not. right? This is how we're hardwired. This is not a thing we can turn off. But also, number two, when you take 100% accountability for where you are, you stop making excuses and stop tolerating excuses, which in turn means, for me anyway, you get more done and you're more productive in respect to like the quality of people you have in your life, because you don't accept stupid excuses. Oh, I didn't do this because, because, you know, the common one is, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. I'm too busy for that. None of that's true. What they're saying is that thing isn't a priority at this moment.
Yeah.
Right? So I've just stopped saying I'm too busy and saying that is not a priority at the moment. Because if it was a priority, it would get done. Right? And that's, I think, the key distinction factor. It's not I'm too busy in any context. It's there's not a needs relationship. There's not a priority attached to you and I having a conversation right now. Okay, fine. So we're not going to have a conversation. Either you can sit here and be, oh, so no, but I don't like that. Fine, okay. Or you can just understand that's the way the world works and say, okay, that's cool. All the love in the world. When and if we have priorities that shift again and we come together and there's priorities and the needs and wants, etc., that is tied to us having a conversation, fantastic, respectful, love it, and I'm grateful to have that conversation when and if that conversation happens. But that's, I think, the key. But I guess in some ways, how do people know what their priorities are and or deal with, like, because there's a social construct which is like people are going to get pissed off if you call them out on their bullshit, right? But I think it's a difference in growth step when you start saying to people, no, that's just not true. I'm not a priority for you right now. Because I think that comes with a level of conflict. It's never meant that way, but that's how it could be perceived, right? So how would you recommend people, if they're going to make that step into articulating it that way, how can they deal with that passive level of conflict that potentially could come with articulating it like that?
When you say articulating it, you mean articulating the boundaries of, you know?
As it, well, yeah, in some ways, because what we're talking about here is setting healthy boundaries and healthy understandings around the relationships we have in our lives, right? But some people, in my experience, and I can speak from friends of mine as well, when they say, no, I'm just not a priority for you, that sometimes means there's a heated argument, means there's a heated exchange. Oh, no, that's not true. And I think that comes from a level of immaturity to an extent. But also, I think I'm curious on your opinion on that, because I think it's a very interesting step that people, if they really want to take growth seriously, they have to make, because unfortunately, it's the uncomfortable truth of how humans operate, right? Like a very, very quick synapsis. The second someone thinks they can make money from you, and there's nothing wrong with this, by the way, but this is an observation that I've had for the last couple of years. The second they can see an opportunity to make money from you, suddenly you'll be top their priority list. Right? Okay. That's cool. Right? But my question is, previously, did that person say, like, oh, I'm too busy for catch up, oh, we'll get round to it, and then ask why? Because now they're suddenly available.
Yeah.
So why is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think to answer maybe your first question there around, you know, these difficult conversations and, you know, calling sometimes people out or just saying the truth, right? As in, look, this is not a priority for me. I think it's very difficult for people because a lot of people take a lot of stuff personal when it isn't. You know, when someone says something, it's always almost always about them, right? It's like, look, that doesn't discount you or doesn't mean that you're more less of a person because you're not a priority. It just means that you're not a priority for me at the moment. But that doesn't mean that, you know, I don't love you or that I don't care about you or that I don't want to spend time at one point with you. It's just I cannot now. And I think when people start shifting from taking things personal and understanding that, you know, when people judge or people say something, it's almost always about them, things become easy because you step out of the immediate storytelling that you do to yourself, like, oh, they don't like me, or oh shit, I'm not good enough for them, I disappointed them, whatever, or what did I do wrong? And that leads to the frustrations, to the difficult conversations. And so that is, I would say, is the first kind of element. But like you said though, Carlton, it takes a lot of work. It's not, no one said it was easy. It takes a lot of work to come to that space, and you take 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards usually. So it takes time and intentional effort.
And I think this is something that you have to constantly do, right? It's not just like I do it and then I've done it, right? Yeah, I've done it, I've grown. Because growth is this mindset. Growth is this, because there's a concept around a fixed mindset, which is the barriers in which we operate in our life, and then there's a growth mindset where there isn't any, right? Where the opportunities are there, and if you're willing to put the work and effort and time in, you will exponentially grow. But it does open up my interest in my next question, which is going to be like this concept around perfect timing.
Yep.
Right? Because people said to me, "Oh, you've gone full time at a non-perfect time for you," because it was at the start of the pandemic, right? Literally 2 weeks before we all were locked down. Not a great scenario, or a great scenario depending on your mindset, right? But the thing is, I mean, what's your opinion on like the perfect time? Because my belief is very simple: there isn't one. Stop waiting for it. If you're that serious, just act now.
Yeah.
In crux, really.
Yeah.
But how would you, if you're, okay, I mean, firstly, what's your opinion on it? But then secondly, if you are talking to someone or coaching someone that's like, yeah, but I'm waiting for the perfect time, how would you sort of help them understand that there isn't one?
Yeah. So first of all, I agree with you. There's never a perfect time. I think there's always going to be things that are not ideal, or things that you wish could be better. Or maybe you think that you're lacking knowledge or whatever it might be. So I see that often. I mean, what I do, or what I would say though on timing, like for example, especially if you want to take a transition from corporate to starting your own gig, I do feel what I see is like financial security is a big one for a lot of people. The fear of loss of financial means, let's say, and so if you're planning on doing such a transition and that's a big fear of you, either first work towards that fear and understand it, or two, create a plan so that you don't just have 3 months to make it work, and for those 3 months you're constantly looking at your bank account and be like, oh crap, because when you come with that energy, it ain't gonna work. Try and set yourself up for success as much as possible. And so one. Number two, in terms of how would I coach people around it, I mean, I'd get really curious. I'd get really, really, really curious, like from what space are they coming? What is really going on? What are they fearful for? Do they, like I said earlier, do they feel that they're not good enough? Okay, let's unpack that. Let's look at what the truth is with capital T. And if there's something that is missing, objectively, okay, let's create a plan. How are we going to bridge that gap? But curiosity is the name of the game in almost all of the cases, because it's like, how are you stopping yourself? What story again are you telling yourself that is stopping you from taking that leap?
And I think it's a really powerful perspective once you've gained it, which is there is no competition outside of where you were yesterday, right? Because I think sometimes we can get into this level of competition anxiety around this company, this person, this entrepreneur, is doing this. They're smashing it. They're really viral on social. They've had this video go viral. They're speaking on a stage. They've just bought a new car. They've just bought a new house. They've just signed this new client, whatever it is. But it's, again, it kind of comes back to my their opinion of you doesn't matter quote. What they're doing doesn't matter to you and doesn't affect you in any way. Why are you giving it energy, time, or resources? Focus on what you have done. Focus on what you can learn from the mistakes you've made, and then you move forward within yourself and have, because the only fair comparison.
Yeah, 100%.
Because you had the adversity you had the skill set you had the available resources, time, energy, so on, than you had, right? Why would you compare yourself against someone else who maybe 10 years older than you, has been in the business 10 years longer, has more resources, maybe they got a big capital investment at the beginning, which then allowed them to snowball and, have 15 employees, etc. Maybe that's a good or a bad thing. Again, none of my business whether it is or not, but maybe that's a good or a bad thing, because sometimes they can have all that, and that's actually what then gets them overwhelmed, and then they make bad decisions, and then that actually, because they aren't naturally growing, so they're not able to actually have enough time to make the mistakes and learn to then do it right, to then become the person they have to be when they are the leader of the $1 million company or whatever it is, right? And that's why I think there's not always an actually you shouldn't take the shortcuts, because you need to become the person who's going to run the company if you want to. Again, it's a vision question. Do you want to work 4 days a week and earn 30 to 40,000 pounds a year, or do you want to have 10 years of your life where you're working 7 days a week, 15 hours a day, so you can run a company that turns over 200 million, 300 million, 400 million, 500 million? What vision is for you? That's not for me to say. I know which one I want, and I know which one I'm striving towards. But that also means when I'm 30, 40, 50, 60, I will have a lifestyle that someone who didn't commit this time, this energy, these resources to doing so. But then that's also not a fair comparison. So this is where the kind of like comparison and comparison anxiety can fall apart, because what are you comparing against?
Well, it's like you say, right? It's a comparison. It's you're comparing apples with pears. You're comparing your start with someone else's middle. I mean, it's just not fair. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that.
And unfortunately, life is unfair in some contexts. But actually, respectfully, if you're watching this show, you're entitled, right? You're in the ability, and you have the financial resources and the ability to be able to watch this show, which means you have a device to watch it on, an internet connection, and you're probably in a financial situation, most likely, again, gross summarization, but most likely in a financial position where you have the time, resource, and energy to watch this show. Great. Thank you very much for your attention. I love you so much. However, you're not in a third world country having a 50-50 chance of whether you're going to drink this water and die, or having to go and hunt for food and think, where's the next meal coming from, right? That's not your reality. So you're entitled by proxy, right? You're in a privileged position in comparison to another human being on the planet, right? And that's the point I'm making. The point I'm making is it's you versus you because of the reality you find yourself. But also, I believe if you're willing to build the right mindset, work ethic, and work bloody hard for a very long time and be very patient with the results, you can, you have the ability to, not going to, actually become anything you want to become, right? I fully believe that, and I believe anyone can if they're willing. And the key is to have enough hunger to be able to do that, right? Because people say, oh, I don't like my job, If you genuinely were unhappy, not like incontent, but actually unhappy, you would do something about it, right?
Yeah.
They're not the same thing. But just as a final point before we wrap up, for those people who maybe are in that job and they are actually in the position, actually, yeah, Colin, I think I actually am in that position where I'm like, I actually hate this place, right? Because it doesn't fit my culture, doesn't fit me, it doesn't serving me, outside of paying my bills, which is important, by the way, really important. What steps can people take to start moving away from the corporate rat race?
It's a good question. So I think there's initially clarity on vision. Super, super, super important. If that's not what you want, what do you actually want, right? But when I say clarity, I don't just mean like thinking about it for an hour, writing some stuff down. Is really be radically honest with what you want. Why do you want it? What is it that's so important? I mean, to give you an example, I've got big vision board. It's not here actually, but I can send it to you if you want in Carlton. And initially I had random stuff like, oh, it would be cool to have a boat. It would be cool, you know. I like to be in the water, be cool. But it's like, do I really want it? No. I mean, no. Like, would I get up every morning, work very hard, you know? Is it really something that I want? No. So like, how clear is your vision? Can you kind of see it? Can you smell it? Can you feel it? Almost, you know, that's the level of clarity that you want. How believable is it? You know, if I'm saying to you, Carlton, tomorrow, like, okay, cool, I want £1 million by tomorrow. Not very believable. Well, I haven't even played the lottery, so not believable at all. So how believable is it? You know, it needs to be a stretch, and you know, I think it's aspirational always. And number three is, how committed are you? Like, are you really committed to it? Are you willing to say no to maybe social things? Are you willing to say no to to some other fun activity, whatever it might be, to stay focused on it? If not, take it out. Take it out. It's not important enough. And honestly, so there's a real element of hard graft to kind of get clarity. But then also kind of getting clarity on who you want to be. You know, how do you want to show up as a person? Super, super important. What are your values? You know, because once you get clarity on that vision, then you can start taking intentional action. And that's when the magic
I think
happens.
just to I think just to add on to that, I think it's about understanding the values and the vision you want to have for yourself
100%.
first, and then how you want to show up for everyone else in your life, and also asterisk, who and what is in your life.
Ah,
Who are they?
100%.
How connected are they, etc. Right? And then how do you want to show up? But for those people who've really enjoyed this
Yeah.
conversation, they really want to connect with you, they want to have that conversation, continued conversation with you, where's best for people to reach?
Yeah, I mean, you can check on my website, theuncageexistence.com. You've got all my socials there, but probably the best MA number actually. So feel free to give me a WhatsApp, give me a call, and otherwise connect on LinkedIn. You know, I'm always available there. You can reach out and we can just generally have a coffee and have a chat. Simple as that.
And as a final piece of advice for those who maybe took really a lot of value from this conversation, but are like, yeah, the economy's still fucking me, what would you say? What can they do? What should they really focus on?
What do you mean in terms of the economy still fucking me and therefore I cannot take the leap or cannot take action?
Up to you in respect to like, what can someone do? What advice would you give to someone who's starting out in business who is really struggling right now? Right? It's like, this economy is really rough and I don't know what to do.
Okay. Bring it back to the core. Bring it back to the core. You know, if you just start in there, you've had some successes, slow it down, look at what has worked, look at what you enjoy and do more of that. You know, it's a bit counterintuitive sometimes because, you know, when things go bad, you kind of, you almost want to force things through, right? You want to force things to happen. It's like, shit, I need to really find clients. I need to do this with that. But you're coming from that space of needy, creepy. So slow it down and take the time to think about what works. Because by slowing down, you'll accelerate.
Thank you for coming back, ladies and gents. I hope you took value from that interview. I'll be back next week with a brand new interview with a brand new guest. It's going to be super exciting. Why not subscribe so you don't miss that episode? And I'll see you very